Okay, so you're welcome to WEAC 2026 SWOT analysis or qualitative analysis. Okay, so our sample C is a mixture of lead triazo carbonate and starch. Um, you mix the two sauce in their right proportion, so you can weigh them or you can just measure them. Okay, you can use maybe measure lead triazo carbonate and 2 grams, you measure starch 2 grams, or you can just measure them using your spatula. You take maybe 3 spatula of lead triazo carbonate and take 3 spatula of starch and mix them. Anyone goes. Okay, so remember that when we want to answer our question, we must answer using the tabular form. We have our test, observation, and inference. So let's go. Number 1, C plus distilled water and mix together. So you bring your sample C, which is already a mixture of what? Lead, triazo carbonate, and starch. And students, remember, you're not going to know the salt. The examiners, which is WEAC, we call the salt sample C. It is only your teacher that will know what the salt is. Okay, so but here I'm giving you the expo already. So the salt is what? Lead, triazo carbonate, and starch. Okay, so let's go. C, you mix it with distilled water. Okay, so in your observation, you write C is insoluble in water and white solid is observed, because C will never dissolve in water, because your lead triazo carbonate doesn't dissolve in water. Okay, so it's insoluble. Then your inference, you say C is a mixture of what? Insoluble substance. Okay, then number 2, C plus dilute HCl or HNO3, that is triazonitrate. HCl is hydrochloric acid. These are 2 high acids. Now let me tell you something. WEAC will never tell you to use the 2 together. WEAC will ask you to use 1. So WEAC might tell you C plus dilute HCl or C plus HNO3. Okay, that's what WEAC will ask you to do. But here I did the 2 all so that you will know what you have. So whichever one you use, whether it's HCl or HNO3, at the observation you write effervescent is observed, colorless and odorless gas evolved. Okay, now when effervescence is observed and colorless gas is evolved, you know that CO32 minus is present. Yes, that is what you write in your inference. CO32 minus is present. Then when you're carrying out the test, once you notice the gas is evolving, what you need to do is you bring lime water. You just cover the mouth a little and put it inside the lime water. The lime water will turn milky. Once the lime water turns milky, you know that CO2 is present, because it is only CO2 that turns lime water milky. Okay, only CO2 turns lime water milky. So you already know that CO2 gas is present. So CO2 gas evolved from CO32 minus. Okay, now then you go to the third one. I told you that WEAC will either ask you to use HCl or HNO3. So if you're using HCl, but before then, if you're using HCl, yes, you are gonna filter it. You understand? Your sample C, you add HCl. After adding HCl, you filter it using your filter paper. Yes, use your filter paper, filtration apparatus. Use your filter paper. So when you filter it, the filtrate, I don't mean the residue, the filtrate. You know what filtrate is? Now the filtrate, you now heat it. Remember, we are talking about HCl. You have mixed your sample C with what? HCl. After mixing with HCl, you now filter it. After filtering it, you now take the filtrate, not the residue, the filtrate. Then you now heat with what? You now heat it here, either with your benzene burner or stove, whatever. Just a source of heat. When you heat it, you will notice that the white precipitate is what? It dissolve. Now, why do you heat, or why will I tell you to heat? You heat because when you add HCl to the sample C, the HCl will react with your lead triazole okay? So your HCl will react with your lead triazole to produce lead chloride. Yes, it will produce PbCl2, lead chloride. Now that lead chloride is insoluble. It cannot dissolve. That is why you need to heat. That's why you need to heat. So when you heat it, in your observation, you notice that white precipitate is what is dissolved. So the white precipitate will not dissolve. Then when it cools, it will reappear. The precipitate will not reappear when it's cool, but when it's hot, it will dissolve. So in your inference, you write lead ion is what? Present. That's Pb2 plus is present. Lead ion is present. So when I can ask you to mix your sample C with what? Your HNO3. I told you cannot do the two. We must ask you to use one. So we now ask you to use HNO3, okay, and mix it to your sample C. So after mixing, what do? You filter, you still filter and bring what? The filtrate. Now here you don't need to heat, because once you add HNO3 to the sample C, it will dissolve. Just look at the equation on the board. You can see. So it will dissolve. Now, then when I could now ask you to add ammonia, that's NH3, that's your ammonia, your aqueous ammonia in drops and in excess. So when you add ammonia to the filtrate, that's the filtrate that has HNO3. When you add ammonia there, in your observation, you notice that your white precipitate is what is formed or observed. White precipitate formed or observed. Now, when you add in excess, when you add ammonia in excess, the precipitate will be what? Insoluble. So now, when you add your ammonia in drops, at the inference, you write lead ion or calcium ion is present, because these are the two ions that has this kind of property when you add ammonia. So, but when you add in excess, the precipitate will be insoluble, confirming lead. So that it confirms that lead is present, confirming lead. So now, having done these two, you now bring the filtrate and add ammonia. Sorry, you now bring the filtrate and add sodium hydroxide in drops and in excess. So filtrate plus sodium hydroxide in drops, you notice that your white precipitate is formed. So white precipitate is observed, okay? White precipitate is observed. Then when you add in excess, your precipitate dissolves. So when you add your that's NaOH, that's your sodium hydroxide in drops, in the inference, you write lead ion or calcium ion is present. Then when you add in excess, you write lead ion is what? Present. So it's confirming it. Now let's test for our starch. So WEAC will ask you to get your sample C, that is the original mixture. I'm not talking about the filtrate, the one you added either your HNO3 or your HCl. No, the original, the first mixture. That's your mixture of sample C and water only. Then yeah, the original mixture. So WEAC will ask you to add your iodine solution. So remember, if you are conversant with a starch test, you know that iodine solution turns a starch to blue black. So in your observation, you write blue black coloration form or dark blue coloration formed. This is a very popular test for starch. Okay, it's a very popular test. So in the inference, you write starch is present. So I bet you will see most of this question on Tuesday. Yes, on Tuesday you see most of this question. So any question, put it down on the comment section. I'll answer it. Thank you and God bless. Please subscribe to this channel. It is called Science Planet. Thank you.